Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Annette Feravich with Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit, and you know that you can find me on the internet at, need my glasses on, I'm seeing a couple of these things, www.healthymindbodyspirit.net. And one of the reasons that I am here today on Tuesday instead of Sundays is because we are getting caught up on our series, which is on a healthy spirit, right? And so if you recall, there are 3 parts to this healthy new you in 2022. And I'm going to end up getting some bad internet connection, it looks like. Making sure I'm recording over here. So part 3 of our 3-part series, A Healthy New You in 2022, where we started with a healthy body, right? And then we talked about a healthy spirit. Then we talked about a healthy mind. And now we are talking about a healthy spirit. So hopefully you are joining me. Now this is a little bit more of a difficult topic to talk about. And it's a difficult topic not because people aren't interested in it. People really do want to know more about a healthy spirit. In fact, when people are considering mental health, approximately 80% of individuals want more information on spirituality as it relates to their mental health. And this is smart. It's really smart because spirituality does affect our mental health. We know this psychologically, even though there are a lot of psychologists who try to avoid some of the metaphysical aspects that we experience and kind of disregard on a regular basis. What we want to do here at Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit is we want to make sure that we're taking a scientific look at those things that are beyond our not beyond our 5 senses necessarily, because that's what we have been given to measure and understand, right, and learn. So it's not beyond our 5 senses, but sometimes, as we've known in cognitive psychology, it can be very tricky to be able to measure things accurately when we are talking about things that are not easily measured by our 5 senses, right? So we have to look at the effect of them if we can't necessarily hear or see them or touch them, for example, right? All right, so that's what we're trying to do here at Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit. We are trying to better understand scientifically, what does the spirit have to do with our health, with making sure that we are healthy individuals. And remember, again, we want to be healthy individuals as in our bodies, but what we've experienced now, because of all of this COVID, we've experienced a lot of mental health deficits, right? A lot of mental health needs that we have been experiencing. And we've been trying to meet those needs as professionals in a lot of different ways, right? Through the university, through teaching, through different scientific studies. But what we also know is that regular science has a single narrative, and that narrative does not include things that are what we consider metaphysical. And so we here at Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit want to change that. We want to make sure that we are also looking scientifically, because it's a method. We can look scientifically at those things that are metaphysical, and that would really help us with our health as well, right? Again, when we are talking about a plant, for example, we don't only have the nutrients necessary for that plant from the bottom up, from earthly things, but there are also other things like energy from the sun that we can't see that the plant also needs, psychologically speaking. We talk about that as top-down processing. So we see these same kinds of processes, these same kinds of methods, these same kinds of outcomes, these same kinds of effects at all kinds of levels in the living organism. And so, therefore, we need to be able to study these scientifically and not be railroaded, right? If we don't like what people are finding in the science, if the science doesn't match our biases, we have to be okay with that as long as what we're doing is good science, right? But if all we have is one narrative, then we don't care really that much about good science, okay? We do here at Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit. We care about good science. Okay, now, also want to let you know I'm dressed today in something so that I can go take a walk. I'm hoping that the sun comes out just a little bit more and I can take my walk. As you know, you may know that I have been also doing a 2-minute health corner. And today's 2-minute health corner is going to be on getting outside. And so I'm going to talk about that just a little bit later on, but I want to prep you for that and let you know I'm wearing my outside outfit. So make sure you are getting outside and getting engaged and getting your vitamin D. All right, I'll give you that as just a little preview. But let's get going from where we were. If you recall now, this is part 2 of our series. And the series now that we are on is part 3. Yeah. What we're on is part 3, which is a healthy spirit. And what we've taken a look at is oops, that's not the way I want to go. Episode 1 was on intellectual beliefs, senses, and intuition. So we were giving ourselves kind of an introduction for a comparison of spirit compared to our intellectual beliefs. Episode number 2, we really defined episode number 1, we're defining science. Episode number 2, we are looking then at transitioning over to beyond science, higher powers, and how many different kinds of mental health programs involve concepts of higher power. So we think it's important. All right, so this is part 2 of episode number 3 is what I said. So each one of those episodes, episode 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, were all divided up into 2 separate episodes. And so this is part 2 of emotions, associations, and truth. Then we have episode 4, importance of memory, episode 5, belief refinement, will, and choices. So when is it our will and when do we have to relinquish our will? Episode number 6 is solution, what not to do list. So we'll get into that and start using that terminology as we move through these episodes. Episode number 7 on sympathy, empathy, truth, and lies. And episode number 8 is renewing of the mind. So again, what we really are looking for is we are looking for real change. Most often, we try to work really hard to become better wives, better husbands, better children. There's a lot of things that we try and do to work really hard. And it isn't easy. That kind of change to be, to overcome certain things as certain shortcomings as a mother. Well, if they came so easy, if the right way came so easy, then we would be acting in the appropriate way, right? Or the same thing with being a daughter, or the same thing with being a committed believer. Or the same thing with being a good and diligent worker, right? That if we see ourselves as not diligent, if we see that we are falling short as a son or daughter, if we see that we are not making the mark as far as our own values and standards go, well, then what we want to do is we really want to change, right? And that change takes, it seems, great effort. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that. We're going to challenge the idea of effort. We know it's not hard to be angry, is it? Right? It's not hard for us to be angry. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if it were just as easy for us to let go of our anger? Wouldn't that be just as wonderful, right? Wouldn't that not more wonderful? Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could let go of our anger as easily as it is produced? And that's really what I'm trying to get you to do. That is really a surrender, right, that I am teaching you to be able to do. It's not easy. I have to go to therapy to learn how to surrender, and all of us have to go to therapy to learn how to surrender those things that we cannot control, right? We have events that we experience every day on a daily basis, disappointments on a daily basis. I didn't get the job I was hoping that I was going to end up getting. I found that out with the promotion. I just found that out today. It's disappointing. And I can reflect on some of those reasons why I didn't get that job, right? And improve. But sometimes also the other part, the spiritual part of our lives, might be looking at all things happen for a reason, right? Once one door closes, another one opens. So these are the things that help you surrender those negative feelings when events occur all the time in our lives that are uncontrollable, right? Okay, all right. Let me take a look at my signal here for just a sec. Okay, sorry about that. Just sometimes I have to check those things. Although, what am I going to do about it? I don't even know. Just good to know. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. So again, part 3, a healthy spirit, is what we are looking at from a healthy new you in 2022. And then today we are talking about principles of transformation, and we started already. What we covered half of this agenda in part 1 of our episode on emotions, associations, and truth. And so, where are we going from here? We talked about what is the goal of transformational therapy. We talked about how our emotions are important in therapy, and we talked about what is unique about anger. And now what I'm going to go through are associations. I'm going to talk about how those associations lead us to certain beliefs. And certain beliefs are intellectual beliefs that we have, and some of them are heart beliefs, but they are all based on what we believe to be truth. Okay? And then, like I said, I'm going to have the 2-minute health corner. But the other day, on the first part, I had sunscreen, and on this part, I'm going to have emphasize going outside. Okay. And again, here's the purpose of transformational therapy: to identify the lies that we believe about ourselves and offer them up to a higher power for truth and insight for transformation, right? So it sounds to me like it is very spiritually based, and I am hoping and depending on something outside of my senses. That's metaphysical. And then we talked about the importance of emotions, and then we defined heart beliefs. Our emotions are associated with our drives for our choices, because our emotions reveal our true beliefs. And this is the reason why we need to follow the emotions trail, because what it leads to is it leads to what we believe are truths in our own heart. Whether or not they are real truth, it doesn't matter. What these emotions lead to are things that we find extremely valuable, that we are willing to highly defend. And because we are so willing to highly defend these emotions, gotta move this over here for a second. We know that they are related to important values. Okay, all right. So, again, when we feel extreme emotions, right? Think about that. Extreme anger, disappointment. A lot of times those come from feelings of injustice is what we do. We have feelings of injustice. When I'm angry, I expected something more, right? There was a shortcoming for me, or sad and disappointed, or hurt, right? So all of these feelings, the stronger that they are, the more we begin to recognize your value, right? That's great. Identifying those values are what's important when we want to better understand and find out which values are being violated when you are being triggered, right? And then how we let those go. All right? So, we talked a lot about anger as well. I'm going to bring this slide up, and I do want to point out just a few more things about emotions and anger before we move on to associations. When we believe that an event is the cause of our feelings, then what that would mean is that we have no control over how we feel about an event. And very often, of course, that is exactly how we feel, right? We get angry, and we get angry because we feel that we have no control over that event, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to regain control by aggressing. That's what anger does. Anger leads to aggression, and we try and regain control by aggressing. All right? If it was the event, though, that is the cause of the feeling that we have, and remember, what this feeling that we're having is related to a heart belief, is what we're saying, right? But if it was the event that was the cause of that, then what could you do to change the associated feeling? Because you can't change the event. And so, working on eliminating the anger, if the anger were rooted in the event, it would be futile to try and get rid of the anger. The anger is rooted in the event. The event occurred and cannot change. The associated feeling, therefore, cannot change. But the feeling we have, the belief that we have, the feeling that we have is associated with the belief that we have. And the belief that we have about the event can change. Our perception about the event can change when we begin to put ourselves in a situation where we can control those outcomes. Anger, sadness, right? Now watch closely, because this is not telling you to deny your feelings. This is not at all telling you to deny your anger, deny your sadness, right? Or even that your sadness over great loss isn't real. Of course your sadness is real when you have great loss. But if, for example, you lose somebody and then 10 years later you are still weepy about it and your eyes fill with tears very easily, or If years later, after the event, you can still get very angry at your brother or sister for what they said or did, then what we found psychologically, therapeutically, that is related to a belief that you have about what that event says about you. It's related to a belief that you have about what that event says about you and not the actual event. Because why would you still be angry, right? It is not, that event is not impacting who you are today. Unless, of course, you let it. And that's because it says something about you, about what you believe about you. So keep staying tuned to see how intricate this is as we uncover what our real beliefs are that are driving our choices. Okay? Okay, and so because it is our emotions that highlight or magnify the beliefs that we have, those are the lens that we are using to interpret the past events. Those emotions, our beliefs, our heart beliefs, and not actual memories create this lens that we have. All right, and so what we want to do then is we want to take a look at that lens. That's what a lens is, right? We use a lens in order to see the picture better. And that's what we want to do. We want to examine the lens through which we view our past and interpret our past, because those are the root of our feelings. For example, when we talk about something that's happened in childhood and that we may feel bad because of something that happened to you as a child, right? Then again, there would be no remedy to that pain. There'd be no remedy to that pain because you can't change your childhood events. But when you are still feeling bad about childhood events, I just want to take a look at some of this stuff. Now, when you feel bad about childhood events long after they should have affected you as a child, then what you are doing again is the pain is not coming from the memory, but the pain is actually coming from what we believe about, for example, our brother. What we believe about, for example, our mom. What we believe about, for example, ourselves, about the way that we were treated in that circumstance. All right, so let's keep moving on. And so what do? We then need to make associations in order to find out the root of the belief, the heart belief that we actually have. So all I'm doing is I'm explaining to you a process. Just like AA has a 12-step process, we here, in order to transform you, right, from one bad negative feeling into a person who could let that go, what we need to do is we need to take a lens and focus that lens on the emotion and watch where that emotion takes us in order to find the beginning of the belief. All right? So that's what we're doing. Again, what we're trying to do is get rid of these negative beliefs that we have. I'm not worthy. I am stuck. Okay? When we get rid of these negative beliefs that we have, then we are then much more free to experience a negative event without letting it consume us over time. That's what we're learning to do. Okay, so associations then are mental processes, or a mental process of connecting one thing with another. Prior knowledge is being connected with the current event that we have. So the mental process of connecting one thing with another, and what we're talking about connecting is prior knowledge and memory with the event that we have right now. So again, what we can do is we can connect that likely in 100 different ways, right? We can connect our memories, and might be able to connect it with a hostile memory, but I might also be able to connect it with a joyful memory, right? If for my personal example, if I am reminded about my mom, I could connect it to a hostile memory, like the fact that she died at a very young age, and I think it was in part a little bit of incompetence by the doctors, right? So I could focus on the hostility of that, and as I make the associations, I will go and uncover more and more reasons for the hostility, right? Or I can focus on what a wonderful mother my mom was, right? And so it is my choice, often, the associations that I choose to make. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to control that lens we're using in order to get it to focus on what are our triggers and our false beliefs, all right? In order, again, to transform. This can be happening in your life and necessary in your life for 100 different reasons, right? Somebody needs to be transformed because they're an alcoholic. Somebody needs to be transformed because they are hopeless. Somebody needs to be transformed because they're having panic attacks. Somebody needs to be transformed because they were abused by their father. Somebody needs to be transformed because their lives are in crisis mode because they can't make ends meet. Okay? Now, don't think that I'm so foolish to think that spirituality and prayers are the things that just simply get us from point A to point B. They aren't. They just aren't. And we all know that even if you're a believer, things don't happen that way. We are told life is hard. Life is difficult for us. And so that's what we really need to prepare ourselves for. We need to prepare ourselves for coping with difficult lives. And when we are able to cope with difficult lives and difficult events that come up in our life, that is when we can experience these feelings of letting go or surrendering, right? Learn, again, we talked about the serenity prayer, so help me change the things that I can change. Help me change the things that I can change. Help me to have to leave the things alone that I can't, whatever. Let go of the things that I can't, and have the wisdom and grant me the serenity, right? Grant me the serenity, God, to let go of the things that I can't change, to change the things I can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. Totally slaughtered that again. Every time I'm on camera, I do that. I'm sorry about that. But that's the point here. Nobody's telling you that you are supposed to turn your bad event into something it's not. No, what we're telling you to do is we are showing you the fine difference between taking and using your ability to help cope with the problem and learning when you have no control over that, right, outcome, and then what you can do about it. Because those are the things that usually leave us feeling depressed and anxious. The events in our lives that we can't control and we don't know how to surrender to them. Okay? All right. So, the last thing on this PowerPoint that I have there, as far as a note there, is report anything. When you are, and remember, this is something that you can do with me as a therapist. This is something that you can do with people across the nation that are actually doing this transformation prayer. You can also get trained on it going to transformationprayer.org. And so there's lots of resources, and let me know if you want more and more resources for this that are available. But when and then this way you end up doing this transformation on yourself, right? That's what we're taking you through, is the ability to learn how to cope with these things on your own. So the last thing there then is to report anything. And that's for you as well. Even when you're doing this on your own, this is for you as well. So when you are following and taking a lens to your emotions, so watching where your emotions take you, and the idea here is it's taking you to a place where you felt those feelings before. That is what that association is the purpose of it is that it takes you to an emotion where it takes you to a place where you felt that emotion before. Report. And then continue to hold a lens on that emotion and then report. What are you feeling? What does that remind you of? What are you feeling? What does that remind you of? Now, we know that feelings are very difficult to stick with, as I've said before in part 1 of this episode on emotions. It's very difficult for us to stick with those emotions. We don't want to. We are trying to uncover something, a lie we believe about ourselves, and in order to do that, we have to follow negative emotions and put a lens on those negative emotions. Well, I'm not asking you to report about the event. I'm asking you to report your feelings about the event. And then tell me what it reminds you of. Then I don't ask, well, what else happened? No, I continue to ask those same questions. How does that make you feel? And what does it remind you of? If at any place in this process you can't feel, and it always happens, or you can't remember, and that also happens, what we call that is a solution. You're putting a solution in place. And what that solution is doing is stopping the associations. This is something that we do very often intellectually. We stop the emotional associations by saying things like, it doesn't matter anymore. That was in the past, right? What good does it do for me to bring all of that stuff up again, right? It doesn't solve anything if we go through this and discuss it, right? So those are all the solutions we put in place so we don't have to feel and we don't also have to remember, all right? And so if that is the case where we are putting these in place, one of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to talk about this in a later episode then on solutions, is we need to figure out what's blocking those feelings. Now, you can see how this truly is very unique therapy, right? It's very unique therapy because we are talking very early on about those things that are blocking emotions. We're getting right to the root of the pain, and the pain is the emotion. The pain is the emotion. So we're getting right to the root of the pain, and we're figuring out what is the foundation for that pain. That's what we're doing. We don't have to hear the stories for very long. What we're doing is what does it remind you of? You can tell me as much as you want to tell me, but make sure that you report. You are reporting things. Again, I will not continue to ask you, and then what happened? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for what it made you believe about yourself. And those are the questions we ask. And so the therapy is good if you have a real fear for having to disclose a lot of very personal information. We simply are not asking you to do that. You will recognize certain things. You will have to tell us in some way that you've recognized them in order for us to know what to ask you next. How did that make you feel? What does it make you think of? Right? Why does feeling that or why does doing that make you feel this way? Right? So lots of different, actually not a lot, a few different questions that we will do in order to uncover the lie, but not uncover the story. We don't have to uncover the details of the story because we don't know where there's truth in that story anyway, right? So the purpose of the association is for you to focus the lens on the emotion and see where it takes you, and then report, okay? And again, I talked about solutions, and what are solutions? Solutions are those things that we put in place to distract ourselves from the terribleness of whatever is going on in our lives, right? So, we put them in place, and solutions can be things like we work 80 hours a week. Solutions can be like we're always on our phone, we're always on Facebook, we're always on social media. That keeps us from ever really looking at, ourselves and the things that we do. So we distract ourselves. Pharmaceuticals might be a way that we distract ourselves as a solution to what? Doing the hard work it might take for us to get healthy, for example. So we take diet pills instead of cutting out sugar. Solutions distract ourselves from the real problem. Very often we put solutions in place to distract ourselves from the negative emotions we're feeling, right? And what we're seeing more and more is that when we are unable to do that, to distract ourselves, what they keep piping through. The depression comes through. The anxiety comes through, right? Through all the cracks in our personality because we don't have enough solutions to keep all of those anxieties, all of those negative emotions at bay. So isn't this great therapy to think about? It is not simply listening to your problems and then saying, this is what dad needed to do, this is what you need to do, this is what brother. No, it's not about that. It is really about simply uncovering those feelings, the reasons for the negative feelings, to get rid of the negative feelings. So you aren't experiencing depression without help from pharmaceuticals. So you aren't experiencing anxiety without help from pharmaceuticals, right? Those are solutions that distract us from the problem. And this therapy is about putting the lens on the problem. Okay? In the end, what you end up having is, and as I started saying, we have many different roads to get to our truths, right? We can decide to see somebody's behaviors as hostile. We can decide to see somebody's behaviors as an outcome of their childhood or their circumstances, right? Or their grieving, or their inability to understand, or the fact that they are less educated. All kinds of reasons why people behave the way that they do. But we can choose to find truth in any one of those very often. Remember, the truth that whatever it is that we believe is our heart belief. And that is what drives our choices. But again, the truth can be seen in many different ways. There are many different paths, many different perceptions to what real truth entails. And then when we are looking at truths, what we want to do then is distinguish between what we just said are truths that are in our hearts, that whether or not this event actually occurred this way, we believe it and nobody can convince us differently. That is a heart belief. A head belief is something that we can change, right? If we want, if we decide that can be changed, right? That we need to change it. So we can have some understanding of the state of Alaska and have certain beliefs that it's cold all the time, whatever you want to believe about Alaska. But you can change those concepts if you read more about it, if you went to visit Alaska, right? If you talked in depth with a friend who lived in Alaska, okay, all of those things would change your head beliefs, and you could actively you can actively go about doing that. We can do the same thing, changing our head beliefs not only about events, right? But we can also change our head beliefs that we have about other individuals. For example, we might think, or we might be prejudiced and have certain beliefs about people who are certain religions, for example. And then when we decide to get to know that belief system better, we find out something different, and that changes our head beliefs. When we are in transformational therapy, what we are trying to distinguish the entire time is what is going on with my head to tell me that I just need to leave this alone, right? To tell me that it's no big deal, to tell me just, grow up about it, and that's the way that life happens. And then there are these, we want to distinguish that between those heart beliefs that tell us that we really do deserve more, or we really do deserve the bad treatment that we're getting, right? Okay, so these are, then we distinguish them in our therapy. We distinguish between head and heart beliefs, okay? And remember, what we are getting at are the two lies that we have there. I am not worthy, and I am stuck, okay? And whether or not we can rationalize not feeling them, what we want to do in this therapy is go down a course to discover, as the layers of an onion, we discover, are you really basing this behavior on lies you believe about yourself, okay? All right. When we are in therapy, it is so easy, as I've said, for us to put solutions in place to distract ourselves from thinking about those things that really hurt our hearts, the things that we believe that people have resentments that we have towards other people because of the way that we were treated by them, right? So those are the things that we value. Those are the things that hurt us the most. And whether or not they are entirely true is not actually critical to what you are believing, or even what we get to in therapy. We get to what you believe in your heart, and not necessarily what you think you should believe about the circumstance or person in your head. All right? We get to what you believe in your heart. We keep trying to work against what you think in your head in this therapy. So the statement there, even though, again, this slide says basically the same thing, heart versus head beliefs, the statement there is important. Not that it is true, but does it feel true? And that's what you're doing. You are looking for these beliefs that you have that you know intellectually may not be true, but it feels like it is true. And that's what we're getting at. Not necessarily what is true intellectually, but what feels true, because that's what we value. And that is where we see the violations come into play, right? Where we see the resentments begin to build. It's not built on what necessarily is true. It's built on the violation that I believe is true. Okay? All righty. And now that's it. That covers this. Let me go back here. And so that covers this episode on emotions, associations, and truth. And so the next time we will be moving into talking about the importance of memory. And so what I would like to do is I am planning to let me think here. I haven't decided when I'm going to start doing these actually on a regular basis. I think I'm going to try and do them on Fridays, but I'm going to be back here this week with the next episode that we're doing. Again, that's a 2-part episode, which is called The Importance of Memory. So first of all, we looked at the importance of emotions, and what we're doing is we're saying, what does that remind you of? How does that make you feel? What comes to mind? What comes to mind when you feel that is what we're doing. And so next week, what we're going to do is next time we meet, what we're going to do is look at the importance of memory then. Okay, so I will meet again this week, and this will get us then caught up on schedule as we are supposed to be. I will likely not be meeting with you on Sunday, but I'm going to be telling you when that's coming up. Okay? All right, so that's all that I have. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dr. Annette Feravich, and you can find me on the internet at www.healthymindbodyspirit.net. And also, don't forget that if you are interested in any of these, you can find me on YouTube. I'm getting my podcast ready. I'm getting many of these series edited, but I have a series on self-esteem, one on love and sex in the 21st century. I have one on depression and behavior, and now we have a healthy new you in 2022. So look for all of those as I begin this summer working on my podcast and getting hopefully this off the ground. Make sure that you are helping me out by subscribing to my YouTube video, Dr. Annette Feravich, liking my videos, and also please share my videos because I want to get a lot of this word out, especially word relative to health. We should be embarrassed by the numbers that we have as far as healthcare goes in this country, which we all know are only getting worse. So I'm going to continue to bring some to mind some of the non-traditional ways that we should be addressing our health, especially because we spend so much money, more money than any other nation on our healthcare, and we are not reaping the benefits at all. We have the highest infant mortality rate of any industrialized nation. We are up the wazoo with vaccines. How many vaccines are now being required or recommended? Upwards of 60 vaccines are being required or recommended, and we see greater incidences of autoimmune diseases. We see greater incidences of depression, anxiety. We have got greater incidences of cancer than we've seen, and in particular, childhood cancers, greater incidences of diabetes than we've seen, insulin resistance. We have all kinds of health issues that are getting worse despite the gobs of money that are going into the hands of pharmaceutical companies. We need to change the narrative. So get the word out when you've got people who have knowledge and some authority to be able to make some changes. And watch to make sure, folks, that they are not taking our rights away and this freedom of speech that we have because people don't like, in particular, at these high levels in health and at the university level, are taking away our opportunity to say these things. Okay, Dr. Annette Feravich, Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit, and I will be back here, I think, on Friday, but I will let you know. And try and join me live if you can. Thanks.